There is a memory you have carried since you were 4 years old. You can still see it. The light in the room, the color of someone's shirt, the way the air felt. You would swear it happened exactly the way you remember it, because it is yours, and because it has never once changed in all the years you have held it. But the real answer is far stranger. That memory may not be a recording at all. It may be a story someone told you so many times, so warmly, that your brain quietly filed it under experience instead of hearsay. And once it was filed there, you stopped being able to tell the difference. How much of what you call your life did you actually live? Start with what a memory physically is. It is not a video. There is no file. There is no shelf inside your skull where the past sits waiting. A memory is a pattern of connections between neurons, and every time you recall it, that pattern has to be rebuilt from scratch. Rebuilt, not replayed. This is the part almost nobody is told. Remembering is an act of construction. Your brain takes fragments, a smell, a face, a feeling, and assembles something that feels seamless. The way a fast sketch artist can suggest an entire face with 6 lines. The result feels complete. It isn't. It is a reconstruction that your brain then presents to you with total confidence. And confidence is the trick. In 1932, a psychologist at Cambridge named Frederic Bartlett ran an experiment that should be far more famous than it is. He read people an unfamiliar folk tale, a Native American story called The War of the Ghosts, full of details that made no sense inside British culture. Then he asked them to retell it. Days later, he asked again. Weeks later, again. The story changed every time. It got shorter. It got tidier. The strange parts quietly vanished. The confusing parts were replaced by things that made sense to a British reader in 1932. Canoes became boats. Spirits became something more ordinary. And here is the crucial part. Nobody noticed they were doing it. They believed they were repeating the story faithfully. Bartlett's conclusion was simple and unsettling. Memory does not preserve the past. It edits the past to fit what you already believe. So what happens when the thing being edited is you? Decades later, a psychologist named Elizabeth Loftus decided to find out how far a memory could be pushed. Her experiments are now foundational, and they are genuinely difficult to sit with. In one line of research, she and her colleagues gave adults short written accounts of childhood events supplied by their families. 3 were true. 1 was invented, a story about being lost in a shopping mall as a small child, frightened, then found by a kind older stranger. It never happened. Not to any of them. A significant portion of participants remembered it anyway, and they did not remember it vaguely. They added details nobody had given them. The color of the stranger's shirt, what their mother said afterward, how scared they felt. They built a whole afternoon out of a paragraph of fiction, and they believed it, because it arrived wrapped in the one thing your brain trusts more than evidence. It arrived from someone they loved. That is the mechanism. Your memory has an open door, and the door is other people. When a trusted voice describes your past, your brain does not treat it as testimony to be checked. It treats it as retrieval, as a reminder. And a reminder is enough to start construction. Have you ever wondered which of your childhood memories came from a photograph? Not from the moment. From the photograph. From the album your family opened every year. From the same 5 stories told at the same table. From the version of you that existed in other people's mouths long before you were old enough to argue with it. There is a neuroscientific reason this works so easily, and it was discovered by a researcher named Karim Nader at the beginning of this century. Nader's work on memory reconsolidation showed something that overturned decades of assumption. Scientists had believed that once a memory was consolidated, once it had hardened into place, it was essentially permanent. Nader's experiments suggested the opposite. When a memory is recalled, it becomes temporarily unstable, chemically soft, and it has to be actively rewritten back into storage. Think about what that means. Every act of remembering is an act of editing. The memories you revisit most often are not your most preserved memories. They are your most rewritten ones. The story you have told 100 times has been through 100 revisions, and each revision was influenced by who was listening, what you wanted them to feel, and who you were on the day you told it. Your most cherished memory is your least reliable one. Now widen the frame, because this goes further back than childhood. At Emory University, researchers Brian Diaz and Kerry Ressler ran a study on mice that produced results people are still arguing about. They trained male mice to fear a specific smell, a chemical with a scent something like cherry blossom, by pairing it with a mild shock. Standard conditioning. Nothing surprising there. Then they looked at the next generation. The offspring, who had never smelled that chemical and had never been shocked, showed heightened sensitivity to that specific odor. So did the generation after that. The researchers found structural differences in the animal's odor-detecting neurons and chemical marks on the relevant gene. The fear, or something functionally like the shape of it, had traveled forward without a single word being spoken. This is the field called epigenetics, and the plain English version is this: your genes are the text. Epigenetic marks are the highlighting and the notes in the margin, telling the body which parts to read loudly and which to read quietly. Experience can move that highlighting, and some of that highlighting appears to be handed down. The science here is still contested, and it should be. Nobody has shown that a human being can inherit a specific scene, a face, an afternoon. That is not the claim. But something is being transmitted that is older than you, and it is shaping what you flinch at before you have any say in the matter. So why does your chest tighten in the dark when you know, intellectually, that you are safe? Now add the layer you can actually see. In the 1980s, a psychologist named Daniel Wegner described something he called transactive memory. The idea is that people in close relationships stop storing everything individually and start storing things in each other. One person becomes the keeper of names. Another becomes the keeper of directions. Neither of them notices the arrangement forming, and both of them experience it as simply knowing things, until the arrangement breaks. This is why people who lose a long-term partner describe losing pieces of their own past. It is not sentiment, it is architecture. Part of their memory system was running on hardware that was housed inside another human being. When that person is gone, the information is not misplaced. It is unreachable. You are not carrying your life alone. You never were. And now go one level up again, to the largest version of this. Almost everything you believe about the world happened to somebody else. You did not witness the wars you have opinions about. You did not see the discoveries you trust. You did not live through the events that shaped the country you were born into, the language you think in, the values you would defend without hesitating. All of it reached you as somebody's retelling, filtered through Bartlett's tidying, softened by Loftus's suggestion, rewritten by Nader's reconsolidation, generation after generation, until it arrived at you feeling like solid ground. You are standing on a reconstruction. Here is the twist, though, and it is not the bleak one you might be expecting. This is not a flaw in the system. It is the system. A memory that recorded perfectly would be nearly useless. The point of memory was never accuracy. The point was prediction. Your brain is not trying to preserve the past for its own sake. It is trying to build a working model of a dangerous world so it can guess what happens next. And a flexible, editable, updatable memory does that far better than a rigid one. Which means the open door to other people is not a bug either. It is the single greatest advantage your species ever had. No other animal can install a memory in another animal's head. You can. You do it constantly. A warning, a story, a lesson, a song. Every one of them is a compressed experience, transferred from one skull to another without the receiver having to survive the original event. That is why a child can learn that fire burns without being burned. That is why knowledge accumulates across generations instead of dying with each one. Your ancestors did not outmuscle anything. They outremembered it. Together. So yes, some of what you remember happened to someone else. Some of what you fear was learned by a body that stopped breathing long before yours started. Some of what you know is stored inside people you love, and some of it is now stored in a device in your pocket, which has quietly become the newest member of your transactive memory system. Notice how rarely you memorize a phone number anymore. Notice how often you check a photograph to settle what happened. Notice how you outsource, without deciding to, the details of your own life. The arrangement is not new. Only the hardware is. And this is where it turns back on you. If your memory is reconstructed every time you touch it, then the past is not finished. It is not sitting behind you, sealed. It is being rebuilt right now, in this moment, by the person you are today. The version of your childhood you access at 30 is not the version you accessed at 20, and it will not be the version you access at 60. You are not remembering your life. You are continuously rewriting it. And the same is true in the other direction. Every story you tell someone else is being installed. Every version of events you hand to a child, a friend, a sibling, becomes raw material for a memory they will one day experience as their own. You are not just carrying other people's pasts. You are writing yourself into theirs. So be careful what you tell people about themselves. Be careful which stories you repeat until they harden. Somewhere out there, someone is holding a memory in their chest that feels entirely theirs, complete with the light in the room and the color of a shirt, and it came from your mouth. There is a memory you have carried since you were 4 years old. It was never only yours.